morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm not going to try that anymore. I'll wait till after lunch. What I'd like to do, so let's start over here with Beth Marshall. If you'll just give your name and what you do at Safety Town, as I always like to say, and what you do in real life. So we have some idea if you're in the police department or if you're a nurse or teacher or what. Okay, Beth?
And so I'm going to wait till he...
We got to talk to you. We got to talk to you. All of you know in the manuals and from your own programs that safety towns are squares and very simple for children to follow. Well, they let this nice elderly gentleman, who must have been a traffic engineer for some speedway or whatever, design the safety town. He put the lines on. I have been to hundreds and hundreds of safety towns. I did not know where the sidewalk was. I didn't know the railroad crossings, and it was round, and it was opening day, and I'm there, and I said, no, none of the kids knew where to go. And I said, who did this? And they said, oh, he's so nice, we're going to redo it. We don't want to hurt his feelings. I said, the kids don't know what to do. You've got to give this man a plan. And they said, well, we gave him what he said he wanted to do his own. So there are times that, you're going to have to nicely. Exactly. That is why, now just so you know, when people call the office and ask us who should sponsor the Safety Town program, number one, you have to remember, it must be a nonprofit agency. I'm saying this because a lot of you work daily, as Pat was telling me. People ask him, they're moving out of town, they want to start a program. The first thing we ask is that you kindly give them our number, so it makes it much easier for them. We put them in touch with somebody who's close by in their area, whether it's Arizona, we have a safety town, and safety towns in every state in the United States and in other countries as well. But when they call in or write in, the first thing we tell them is find a civic organization or Parks and Rec, community education, police department, someone that's a nonprofit agency. Now, the reason we suggest a civic organization is number one, all the major ones, Kiwanians, Rotarians, Junior Women, AAU Women, whatever, have a national blanket insurance policy for any activity that they conduct, whether it's selling candy or whatever. There's a lot of insurance. We have, 2 or 3 groups just called, I think, the last week or two. One group in Illinois is paying $2,000 a week for insurance because they're their own little group of mothers of precious children or something of that type. They want to name their own. And they're having a hard time. To spend that kind of money is ridiculous. We tried to get a blanket national insurance policy. What they said is that if you could actually be negligent. You could have a chuck hole on your safety town that would be 2 feet thick. Now, not 2 feet deep. Your kids could get hurt. We would be held responsible, but yet we'd have to pay the insurance, but yet it was your fault. You were negligent. So our attorneys just said, no, everyone has to do their own insurance. That's why we recommend the nonprofit agencies. Now, some of the police departments, as I said, this goes back many years, and it's very true still today. Many police chiefs, when we talked to them about starting the program, literally threw me out of their office, right in this town, right in this area, because they said, hey lady, we don't have the time to build the houses, because I went into them and said, here's the houses you need, you have to register kids, and they said, lady, we don't have enough police officers to handle phone calls and do the registration. So that's how we came up with getting the civic organizations involved. They do the registration with the PTA through the schools, any number of ways, but we said, look, we set it up, will you have a police officer there to work with the kids? And they said yes. So that's how we got the civic organizations involved, okay? So Judy West was the original gal who started this, and at that time I was doing some work with the Department of Highway Safety, and Judy called me and said, we're trying to start, this is 1973, I'll never forget it. And she called and she said, we've been trying to start a safety town for 3 years here. And she said, we need some help. So I went in and I said, what's the name of the organization? Let's get this. Women in Action or something like that. And I said, the name alone was going to scare these people. And after I made the presentation, there was the superintendent, various people were in the audience. After the presentation, so help me, the superintendent came up to me and said, we didn't know this was a national program. We thought this was just some women in our community organizing this. And I said, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? But see, they didn't know, and after that, it went smoothly now. Young Women in Action, that's what it was. Now, men, if I came up to you in 73 and said, I'm with Young Women in Action, I'll tell you, even if I was a woman behind the desk, I'd be a little nervous. But NASA?
NASA, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Next to
Now, some corporations do have a program for their employees' children.
I think that it might be incorporated in daycare, but...
Yeah, a lot of corporations are doing that. That's great. We had some problems in To give you an example, in New York, they had a driver ed teacher, teach Safety Town, and they called us after a week and said, who else should we get? He's not very good. He was so used to the large words that it was difficult for him to break down, and the kids wouldn't understand, and they said it took him 2 hours, one whole session, to cut out and make a fireman's hat for the next day. So they were a little concerned. But this is what we really see as an ideal situation, is have the police officer and the teacher and the firefighters, of course, work together. I was talking with you and also to Pat earlier. We're really excited to see today that more and more police officers and uniformed personnel, firefighters as well, getting involved in child development and early childhood safety education. That was not true years ago, and this is why when I started doing this program and really promoting it, I said we have to have the combined efforts of the teachers who didn't have the training with the early childhood and the police officers, and work together. Safety Town one time, observing a very nice police officer. He's been my friend. He was a sweetheart man, but he talked about 20 minutes about eye cataracts to old people. And these kids didn't understand what he was talking about. And we had a firefighter one time, a child asked, again, as I said, I observed all these, so I know. The hook that you have on the ladder, the child asked what that was for, and they said to take dead people out of the water with. So we felt they needed a little bit of help in working. And I could go on and on with some of these. And then I remember one town we opened in Michigan, and the mayor was there, the superintendent, and we have the ribbon, and we have all the people, the media there. We're waiting for the police officer to help cut the ribbon, and nobody could find him. And he was back in the cafeteria, and he had the manual open, and he's trying to memorize what he should say word for word. And the man was scared to death. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to say it right. I said, just be yourself. The kids can detect that. What you want to do is read this information, but you have to see that it's comfortable. We're more concerned about developing a relationship. We can't do that as teachers. I can tell my kids, if I have 40 kids every day, and I could say, boys and girls, here's a picture of a police officer. I want you to know that the police officer is your friend, and he will help. And I could go on and on and on. That's not nearly going to be as effective as you putting them on your lap, talking to them. That's what we want to establish. I don't care what your terminology is. I don't want you talking about hydraulics and all this kind of thing too. But just simple, hi, how are you? Boy, that's a nice shirt you wear. That relationship is just great. Yes, Pat, you want to share
I'll
something?
never forget one of the first years I taught it. I read a story to the kids, and afterwards I said, there's a group of 5-year-old kids obviously, and I said, okay, what's the moral of the story? And the girl was there looking at me like, are you? I was like, no, man, I just said that.
Yeah, well, I find that, of course, I've had problems the other way. When my husband, who recently retired from university, he had been a Case Western Reserve in chemistry for many years and then switched to University of Akron. And I was invited to the faculty wives tea. And I normally don't have time for those things, but I thought I'd go first time to be nice. And I'm sitting with this group of about 20, 30 women, and I used the word alternate, and I said, oh, that means to take turns. So we worked in reverse. But they sort of looked at me, but fortunately one of the ladies next to me knew what I did. She said, oh, she works with children all the time. Okay. People, I heard a few comments about the light. The light does operate. We did not bring the battery. It operates on a car battery, and we had this design a few years ago because when we first started, again, we had the huge, big lights with those big boxes and big cords, and kids would fall over them. They couldn't get the cars over them. So as we toured, I kept asking if anyone knows how to make a traffic light. Let us know. So many years ago, the Mentor JCs undertook this as a project about maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And we were so excited. We sent out information, made a nice brochure, sent it all around the country. The state of Kentucky ordered like 35 lights. And the JCs the next year decided not to make them anymore. So did I have to go down to Kentucky Department of Education and do some sweet talking? But we had to find a corporation. Of course, it was cheaper when they were doing it as a nonprofit thing, but now we had to find a corporation because there was such a need for them. And we have a railroad light as well that blinks. It's about that high as well. But if anyone's interested, because I said we did not bring catalogs. Now, all of our information is sent to the coordinator. We only can send because we send out like 900 newsletters and our catalogs and so forth. Our registered and accredited certified programs do get our bi-monthly newsletters. The other ones do not unless you pay for them, because that's one of the services of being a registered and accredited certified program, as well as the seat belts and other things that are required. But as far as being registered, you do get that. If you are not RAC and you want to get the newsletter, then I can't remember what the fee is per year. I know it's very nominal, $8 or something. $10 is it per year? And that's where a lot of our information is. We're doing a big spread this year on our this month on voting safety. But when you get that, you can duplicate that and give that to as many people, your police officers or whatever. There's no problem. We always have it somewhere in the newsletter. We try to put it. You are the only person. You can duplicate that so other people get that and pass on the information. That's okay. While we're talking about missing children, let me just say a few things. And I hope everyone understands this. I'll try to say this clearly as I can. We are certainly very, very concerned about missing children. There's no doubt about it. There's nothing more tragic. However, based on the FBI statistics, only 4 to 5% of the children are actually taken by a stranger. Most of them are non-custodial parents or that type of situation. Now, when we talk to NHTSA people, National Highway Traffic Safety, and other people, agencies, they always tell us that they have to look at things in a circle, okay? For example, we're telling them, and we've told them for years, that we want some funding for our local programs. From day one, from about 1968, when I first started going to Washington, my concern there was, look folks, these people are trying to raise money for a program. It's not expensive, but if they raise $500 through donations for houses, to build their houses, can you here in Washington provide them $500 for materials for the classroom, the posters, the puzzles, so forth. Very simple, right? Well, that's what they told me in Washington. It's too simple, it's too logical, it's not going to work. What we did do, though, okay, we were fortunate to go to each governor's rep. And the state of South Dakota did that, Michigan did that, Ohio did that for a while. Then the funding was cut because, as they said, they told me this is the pie. And there's only so much in there. You can only cut it so many ways. When you have alcohol taking a large part of the drug driving, that's where they spend most of the money. Most of the people are killed with drunk driving, okay? And the age group, 15 to 24. They had to break it down that for you. Now, the missing children is a very, very small part of it. Actually, more children are going to die from fire and have permanent injury and disabilities from fire than you will from missing children. But how much do you hear about fire? It's a good media thing. And as I'm saying, it's not that we're not concerned, but please in your program, I don't want you to spend out of the 20 hours, 15 hours on strangers and missing children. You want to talk about it, inform them, but I think that's one subject that is really covering so many areas that you really want to Safe Town is a comprehensive program. In doing the curriculum, I personally observed children, along with any questions I had. I worked with pediatricians and child psychologists on their development, peripheral vision, their lack of muscle. This is why when children board the buses, you don't see children doing this as we do. They don't know how to do this. They'll go this way. And what's going to happen if somebody's really close to them? They're going to get kicked. So that's what you have to do, is show them how to do this, how to line up, how to sit back, what type of bus to use. All this, Safety Town should be a doing program, learning through their own involvement. We get calls at the center that the child, they've been coloring for 2 hours. That's not Safety Town. That is not a Safety Town program. 95 to 98% the kids should be doing. You'll see in the video, even with demonstration, have your poison bottles, hold them up, show them what they are, ask them questions. Reading, to me, I want to do a video just on how to read to children. I can get 40 kids and give them 2 hours, the 20 hours in an hour. Boys and girls, now next time you get on the bus, here's what you do, and if a stranger comes, and if you see matches, don't touch them. And that's not working with them, teaching them. That's just talking to them. They're not even listening. You've lost them. What you want to do is hold up that book. Even if it has words, they're not going to understand some of the words. If they do, that's fine. If you want to cover up, ask them, what is the picture telling them? We'll go through some of this afternoon. But that's what we're talking about, getting the children involved. Like I said, I get upset when I go to some of the programs and see what they're doing. Last year I was in Michigan, and it was an area where they had some lakes, and I can understand their concern. They were actually, and they spent one whole day on this. They had a color sheet. They had every child bring in a gallon milk cart with a handle to fill that up with water, tie a rope, and when they go to the pool, if somebody's drowning, they throw that and hold on to the rope to get somebody out of the water. Now, is that the responsibility of a 4 and 5-year-old? What do you think is going to happen? You think they're going to let go of that rope? Of course not. They're going to hold on and go right in the water with it. How are they going to pull anybody out? Now, why are we teaching this to 4 and 5-year-old children? Why? She said, we thought it was important. You know, just very simple things that you stop and think about. And that's our concern, and that's why we had to go into the registered accredited certification of the program back in 1980. I had no intentions of ever doing that, ever. What we did is, again, just for some brief background, when I started doing Safety Towns, and I did a pilot project here in Greater Cleveland to try to convince the Automobile Club or Safety Council or someone to pick it up and do it. So I organized 32 in this area over a period of about 3 or 4 years, and took all the information and documented it. And I would come in, let's say that Beth wanted a Safety Town down in Wheeling. She'd call me in and say, fine, Beth, I'll come. I never charge, I still don't. I'm still a volunteer in essence that way. I get royalties and so forth for books and my consulting fees, but they all go into the center. But if Beth would call me at that time, I'd say, Beth, I'd come down and help you under one condition. After I come down and help you, you will start the next community going. Okay? And that's how it networked. I had no idea how many programs we had. I didn't care. The whole thing was just to keep networking. Until they called me from Washington, because I was trying to get this funding for you guys, okay? And they said, we have to do an evaluation of Safety Town. And I said, fine. Of course, they wanted to look at bottom line statistics from accidents, and we could go into that. But I said, these kids, this is an education program. I compare it to math, English, history, any other subject, and they're looking for bottom line reduction of accidents. And I said, that really doesn't, that's not the purpose of the program. And that's difficult to tell to engineers in Washington. But anyway, they called me and said, we're going to do an evaluation. And I said, fine, we'll go along with that, that's fine. But to make a very long story short, the very first one, because they had never, all the 20 men or so that I was dealing with, no one had ever observed a Safety Town. And I said, how can you sit behind that desk and determine what you're going to do for us when you don't even know what you're talking, what the program's about? I said, go out and visit one. So they went out to visit one in Baltimore, Maryland. Dr. Leroy Dunn called me. And his exact words were, Schlad, what in the hell are you doing teaching motorcycle safety to 4 and 5-year-olds? And I said, it's not in the curriculum. That's not a part of our program. I said, where were you? And they said, Baltimore, Maryland. I said, I didn't even know we had a program there. And he said, well, you send us a list of the programs that use your curriculum because we've approved your curriculum to the center. And I said, we don't have a list. We don't know there's Safety Town programs. But we had to send that out very quickly. We had to get attorneys to do something because they were going to send a letter out to every governor's rep at that time. This was back in 1978, 78, 79. That Safety Town was, based on lack of evaluation, was not an educational program. So I had to really fight, along with a lot of people, to keep the program. And as you can see from media people who know nothing about this, the educational efforts are always high on the list. We get letters of recommendation, and not recommendation, letter of commendation from superintendents what the excellent curriculum is. So we have to fight for that. But that's why we're concerned. If you ever hear me or read any of my information, that's my number one concern, is making sure whatever you include in the curriculum, you don't have to do word for word. That's a guide for you. You might want to have more railroad crossing safety. You might live in a town where you might want to have some extra water safety. Whatever it is you want to do, that's fine. Make sure it's geared to that age level. Okay, that is so important in the terminology and what they can handle. We don't want to hear about, as we did some, how to distinguish between picking poison and non-poisonous mushrooms. I mean, I could go on a list of some of these things, and it's just, we have to stop doing that and help the kids. We're concerned, if we teach that attitude now, and that's the whole purpose that we want to do, okay? If we teach them to be careful with their toys, why they don't put their toys on the floor, someone would get hurt. If we continue that slowly, when they get drivers, they're going to be caught, they're going to be concerned, they're going to be careful. We've already planted that seed and developed that attitude. It's there for them. Changing behavior is one thing. Okay, everyone says we have to behavior modification, and we have to change behavior. I'm all for that, except I put one thing before that. And I've talked about this, and I've got to put this up in a paper and a video. We have to develop the attitude. Okay, I can change Bill's behavior, or not me. Pat can change Bill's behavior very quickly. If Pat's on the road and he's got his little red light going, and Bill's going 75, and he sees that red light You think his behavior is going to change a little? Think he's going to slow down? Well, what's his attitude going to be? Is he going to understand that the reason why he's stopping him? Or is he going to say that blankety blank, why isn't he doing something else? That's what I'm talking about. That's what we have to develop with these children. We have to develop that attitude. We're not going to be around in 20 years to know what we might be teaching space safety. And if we can start teaching the attitude, whatever it is, as they develop, they'll be able to adjust. I like to refer to it as their thinking tools. Okay? We can't spoon feed kids for every rule that they're possibly going to encounter. We have to give them the thinking tools that they're going to be able to say what's safe, unsafe. This starts early age in school. If somebody says, climb up to the top of the tree and jump down, we have to start telling them why you don't do that. And that's where you start developing. It doesn't have to necessarily be safety. I mean, every day, it can be general thing. One of the rules that I told Children's Press when they commissioned me to write the books is that I would not put the word safety in any of the titles. Now, you have to remember when I started writing that was in the early 80s, and safety was not the catchword that it is today. People didn't want to hear it. I wanted the children to pick up the books for two reasons. I wanted them to learn how to read, to help them learn how to read, as well as learn a safety message. And the safety message is in there. It's interwoven very, very softly. I didn't want to say fire safety, car safety. I didn't think that was my style. Anyway, what he is currently doing, not the same thing, but the same title. I worked for the Department of Highway Safety in 73, 74, but my role was a little different. I spent 2 days a week working for the Department of Highway Safety and setting up safety consults and going to various meetings on safety belts and so forth. And then 3 days a week I traveled the state setting up safety towns, and that's why we have a lot of safety towns in the state. And then in 74 we formed our own organization and went that way. But this man is with the Department of Highway Safety since 81, and he's all over. Well, this area is basically his. I've seen him at state functions of the Department of Highway Safety all over the state, and he does a wonderful job. And he's going to tell you now what services are available from the department and how the department and he personally can be of help, since most of you are in this area. I would now like to proudly present to you Mr. George Russell.
Several things that Dorothy asked us to talk to you people about today a little bit. Relative to things that the Ohio Department of Highway Safety can work with you on. Those of you that are not familiar with us, we've been around for many years. As Dorothy said, I've been there since 1981. I retired as a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Department down in Stark County.
And the aisles, that doesn't apply, so those are
Okay, so I do have an address for you if anyone's interested. It's the National Safety Belts for School Bus Association, and I will get that address for you. If I do get it, we'll make sure you get it by the telephone. Now, one of the big things that you're talking about from the attitude, if we're talking about developing an attitude as we did, here we are, we have these kids who cannot go home from the hospital without some type of a device. And then they get on the school bus, they get in the car on their safety belts and get on the school bus. So the big question and the big controversy and big debate and lobbying for the people who do want the safety belts on the school buses say, if nothing more, it should be for the follow-up for the attitude that they wear the safety belts, okay? But again, there are so few children. It's one of the safest forms of transportation. Most kids are injured and killed, their papers going underneath the school bus, things of that type. Inside the school bus is very safe. Now, what she was talking about, kids running in the hall and so forth in the aisleway, what they're trying to do, and you have tried for 20 years, at least that I know of, is try to get someone else on that school bus beside the driver. Try to get a monitor. PTA people, women have volunteered to do this. Because what they're saying, in essence, now stop and think, and Chris and I'm sure George can understand this, we have been instructed with the departments to go out and talk to people, wear your safety belt. Make sure your kids are in the back seat so they're buckled up. So if you have to apply the brake, you won't have to worry about them flying around the car. Now picture this with one driver and 60 kids on the bus. I mean, it's physically impossible to concentrate on driving and yet have the kids patrol. So we're saying get a monitor on that bus, to take care of the kids, to take care of the attitude. And I know a little bit about this because my husband has served on school boards throughout the years, and our phone calls, the phones at home would ring with kids taking glasses off, throwing them out the window, lunchbox, brain concussions. There are more accidents inside the school buses from the kids rather than the actual accidents. So there's a lot of those things that happen.
They would have to go across town and back, and across town and back. That's a 4-hour.
Yeah, but it's too difficult for the driver. All the driver really should do is drive the school bus. It's impossible for them to take care of 60 kids on a bus. Would you want to do that? How could you possibly do that? Now let me tell you what Canada's been doing, okay? Canada is putting the seats reverse. Okay. Now they found some problems with motion sickness with the children early age. Older age is no problem, early age is, again, if you want to, maybe we can track down some copies. Bill, make a note of that. We can put that maybe in the next bi-monthly newsletter, some of the reports of the Canadian. I just want to make a few comments on some of the things that are touched. First of all, on 911 and emergency, okay, now I'm talking about national things and things that are done in safety towns other than here in the local area, around the country. And again, please listen carefully, okay? Please, when you're telling children about what to do in case of fire, the first thing they do is not dial 911, is not dial the emergency number, is to get out of the house. Please. Now that's in case of a fire. I'm not saying don't go and tell your children that I'm not telling them not to dial 911. I'm not saying that. In an emergency other than fire, it's fabulous. If they're in a house and mommy should fall and she can't get to the phone, fine. But in case of a fire, get them out of the house. Don't ever tell your children to do something that's going to endanger their life. Now let me just briefly tell you a couple things. Number one, today we live in a chemical society. Most houses are built of chemicals that will go up in a flash. And being married to a chemist, I know this, okay? We've seen enough demonstrations. They do not have the time that we did years ago when things were made of heavy, heavy wood and it would take longer to burn. And there's a movie out about this too, by the way. So you want to get them out of the house. If you tell them even to dial 911, we have found that many boys, many children, mainly boys, up until age, have an eye reversal problem. So even if they get to the phone, they have a difficult time dialing the phone. 911 now is something else because a lot of 911 is now recorded. If there's a domestic problem in the house, we're getting a lot more sophisticated. But a lot of the phones are in the kitchen, and that's where lots of fires start. The majority of the fires start in the kitchen. And that fire is not going to wait when that child gets to the phone and tries to dial, or get into the bedroom and into the closet. I could tell you stories upon story on front pages of the paper in St. Louis, Missouri. There's a picture of a little girl, Bernadette, in her bedroom with the phone in her hand, trying to call. So please, in case of a fire, the first thing they do is to get outside. Dial 911 from next door or someone else, okay? The firehouse is excellent. There are many of them around the country. We just had a call on last Thursday from someone. Their concern is we have to do some research now as to what type of chemical is the smoke. Is it actual smoke that might be hazardous to some of the kids inhaling? I'm not sure. I have not checked on that, what type of chemical smoke, but there's a controversy. It's not going to be used in one safety town because of that. So these are some of the problems that we have. As soon as we get information, we'll get that to you. But I would check with your people.
Well, we asked them if it was hazardous or dangerous, and they said no.
Okay, it's a fake. Okay, just like they have the fake marijuana pills that you can light, and it's a marijuana smell, but it's not. Just like the imitation cherry and so forth. So I'm assuming that's what that is. Okay. The crier situation. Now, there are various ways to handle that. I think your thing with the clown is an excellent one. What we have found, and this is based with, as I said, with a lot of child psychologists who are nice child, not way out ones, but normal child psychologists. They, again, said what you should do is get the child's mind off of crying as soon as possible. You don't want to say, now stop crying, your face is going to get dirty. This is going to have all this. You want to stop that. You want to tell them that they're going to be coloring, they're going to ride in the cars, they're going to do all these things, okay? 90% of them will stop, 99% of them will stop. I've been bitten too. I was bitten in the cheek and my glasses thrown off and kicked in the stomach and all these kinds of things that you do. But there are problems. I don't know if you took time, if you had time to find out about that. The boy that did this to me, I found out later through a long series of talks with the mother. This boy was going to kindergarten, He was the oldest of 3 children. He was 5, he was a 4, and a 2.5. The mother was not quite 21, divorced, and living alone with the children. And she told me at the very end that what she did to get the children to be quiet is she packed her suitcase and go out the door. This is why this kid was so deathly afraid of what she left. Okay, right? As I said, when you see it, it's not normal for a child to be that panicked unless there's some situation behind there. The certificates. Again, I want to clarify this. We have our Bill Cosby and our Clancy certificates. Those are strictly for the kids. We highly encourage each community to make their own in addition to that. Which we have some that have 10, 12 signatures. The police chief, the fire chief, the mayor. That's good PR for you. That's wonderful. The kids don't know who your police chief or mayor is. They don't care. We have found more parents telling us that they put the Bill Cosby certificate on the wall and it reminds the kids about their safety because there is a message to mom and dad and the kids from Bill Cosby, the picture. I'll tell you what one community did, Richfield, Ohio, very close to here. They had the graduation, they had the mayor there, and the mayor called the child with the parent. The police chief gave the certificate to the child, and the mayor gave the certificate to the parent. Now, you're talking about good political PR.
That's really sad. So I appreciate that. I may be kind of you. I'll write your name down. At this point, I'm hoping that the fact that I took a different approach this year may work. It took me a while to develop a little political savvy because I'm not used to an area where, I give hundreds and hundreds of hours of volunteer time to this program, and a policeman that isn't willing to come speak for a half hour that lives in the neighborhood on his own time kind of took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that. So I'm learning slowly but surely. Cleveland's a tough town.
I can really sympathize with Pam because we tried not only the program but getting an organization off the ground. You can't imagine how many years I've trying to get funding from Cleveland corporations, and they said, "Well, you're national. Why don't you go to other places?" We went even after we got Prudential in New Jersey, and we came back and said we have Prudential, and we get very little funding from the organization from Cleveland. And I tried to start Safety Town in Cleveland in 1968 with the Department of Education under Dennis Kucinich. We were going to have about 30 safety towns at the Parks and Rec Department. We did get a lot of cooperation with his administration. As much bad press that he has gotten as mayor, but that's the most progress we made under any administration, and everything was shut down. We did work with Superintendent Halliday and Roland Kreitzberg, who used to be the police officer for the children in Cleveland schools. We worked with them. They were going to buy a tarp and go into the schools. We went there to measure the size of the old classroom in the old schools and have it traveling. There was always something that stopped it down the way, and she said it's extremely, extremely difficult. Just so you know, Cleveland is the only city in the United States, before a nonprofit organization can go to any corporation for funding, you must have a complete audit, which costs us about a little over $2,000, and you must be approved by the Greater Cleveland Growth Association board, and then they publish a letter with your name on it. And I did not find this out until we had Clancy at the auditorium several years ago, and we sent letters to the various corporations. Would you buy 20 kids for the children from Palmerdale and different places to visit, and they would not sponsor it. Many of the things that we're doing now, we forget. We started a long time ago. Just so you know that what we have done as an organization, and we're very bad about this, we promote the program. I'm still an educator. I try to be a lobbyist and so forth in Washington, but I'm basically an educator. And we still do a lot of promoting of the program, and we do very little of promoting of what we have done as an organization. The reason you local people, and this is throughout the country, are able to get a lot of this local participation from McDonald's and Burger King, we had to send to their main office, to their headquarters, all of our information and be approved. And then they sent out, this was years ago, that we were accepted and our program was legit and so forth. So we had to go through all this years ago, and that's why we've been in a lot of publications, insurance companies and so forth. I just was in Charlotte and met a man from Ford, the Ford company, and they're going to put something in our publication. They've done some locally. Chrysler and all these, we've been on Post TV and a lot of Exxon and some of the corporation things, but that all had to be cleared through us, the corporations, just as we will not recommend a program to you unless we have thoroughly checked it out. Okay, just so you know, we do a lot of work. And as I said, some of it's in there, but we only have a limited amount of time and we do that for this. The teen instructors party, someone in Illinois told us this and it was fabulous, and I think we included it in there, but I'm not sure, so I'll tell you. Do you notice when you came in, we had the coffee for you and we had some music, okay? And I learned that from this lady a couple of years ago, because she said what she did before is just have the teens come in, and she found that they just either by themselves or with a small group, and when they had chips and some Coke and some music that they were familiar with, she said they were like, hey, this is pretty neat. Even before you said a word about them doing anything, they liked the attitude, they liked the atmosphere, okay? I tried to meet all of you coming in so it wouldn't be cold and soften the whole thing. That's much more so for the teens. So have some Coke, have some chips, and make a nice soft presentation to them. The fire trucks, you can do two ways. Pat has his come. Some communities take the kids to the fire station because some communities, just so you know, again, from the political standpoint, I've had fire chiefs tell us that the people in the community are paying taxes for that fire truck to be at that station so they can get to their house as quickly as possible, and they will not take the fire trucks away from that station. But you can bring the kids there, they will take them through. So you have to adjust, okay? For the houses, for carpentry, that's great, but don't rule out several possibilities. Many communities now are utilizing senior citizens. In one of the Chicago papers, they made the front page of one of their Sunday publications, senior citizens built the houses. The kids in the woodworking shop at the high schools. Sometimes there's arts, artist group in town that want to build them and paint them. So there's all kinds of options. If you can get someone like that, it's much easier, but don't rule out a lot of options. This is what we're here for, to share different ways. You pick out what's best in your community. When we go into a community, whether I do it or any of our coordinators, we might call you, and as someone, Beth, we just called upon Beth to go into Toronto, Ohio to help them start out. We want you to go in and tell them what you do, but give them a wide range, because what you do, even next door, might not be applicable to them. You want to give them as many possibilities and let them decide. Don't ever go in a community and say, this is the way Safety Town has to be done. Because it can't. It has to be what your community is best for your community. Busing situation, look how close she is to them. I mean, they wouldn't know where being compatible in certain things. Yeah, and yet their programs are completely different. So what we're doing as an organization, remember, that's why we came up with the name National Safety Town Center. We wanted a center place where anyone in the country could write for information on Safety Town, a national center. And that's how we came up with the name. Now, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, of course, we're in 28 other countries, and our books are in English and Spanish, and it's growing internationally. That's why we had to change the name. Plus, safety is getting a lot into health, and a lot of our monies now, a lot of your monies will be coming from the Department of Health, things like the traffic light and TARP. These things you can get from the State Department, which will take the candy. I would highly recommend that you stay with that. And then this is would be an excellent follow-up for teachers in nursery school or kindergarten or Head Start and so forth to follow up. Remember, because I, again, believe in getting them involved, the actual involvement of taking that situation, although, children will do it because it's a controlled situation, whether they're going to drive on the real street or not is something else. But if it's effective for you and you're doing it, don't change. One thing we have to learn in education, remember I said don't try to throw everything in a 20-hour program. By the way, many of the communities are extending programs into 22. We have programs now that go 22, 26, 28, 30 hours because a lot of them are adding more water safety, more animal safety. Some are having the park rangers come in and talk about different things in the parks, depending on where you live. So that's no problem. But you have to be a minimum of 20 hours if you're a RAC program. And you really have to rush to get everything in. That's so true. Remember, every time, even in the program, every time that you repeat something, it must be presented in a different manner. If you say the same thing over and over and over every day for 10 days, those kids are going to get bored. This is why, during the curriculum, as I said, we did a lot of research with a lot of people. One time, if you're going to present it with a book or a poster, the next time with a puzzle, the next time with a game, keep doing it a different way. You have to, education is repetition, but if you do it the same way over and over, you're going to lose them. This is why programs like this are excellent. In Safety Town, you're going to have the actual involvement with the stranger. Let's say they're either at a nursery school or preschool, get in kindergarten, they'll have this along with the Adam Walsh one. It's got to be constant. It's a constant. Again, remember, with math and English. We don't just tell the kids one time about how to do math or English or history. It's a constant thing, in sequential order, and that's exactly what we have to do with safety. Okay, please help promote these programs. If you have nothing on strangers and you need this, this is excellent. But again, if you work with, and all of you should be working with your teachers in your elementary schools. If you can, we highly recommend that you meet with your teachers before school. Tell them what you've done. Give them part of your curriculum. Show them your curriculum so they can continue on there. The whole thing of working together is only what we're going to do. I'm glad you mentioned about your railroad crossing in parks. Even though you don't have a railroad crossing in your community, I highly recommend you spend at least 5 minutes telling some children a very simple 1 or 2 basic rules. If you ever visit grandma, grandpa, or friends and there's a railroad crossing, railroad tracks, we never go near the railroad.